In the previous videos, we saw how this new idea, concerning the connection between brain biology and culture, describes how the brain biology of a population of humans manifests as human culture. Central to this new idea is the concept of neurochemical emergence, whereby the neurochemical processes of the human brain emerge from the brain as items of mediation, which collectively constitute human culture. Let's look at this key process, in the formation of culture, in more detail, starting with the emergence of rationality. In video 2, we looked at the very beginning of the emergence of rational neurochemical processes as items of mediation, such as with the creation of flint tools and baskets. This process would have involved two or more individuals watching and learning from each other. That is to say, stimulating the rational processes of each other's brain through imitation and learning gestures in order to manifest a useful object. This involved the mutual stimulation of such fundamental rational neurochemical processes as cause and effect, induction and deduction, short and long-term memory, and pattern recognition, through which an object could be gradually made that functioned in a rational way in the material world. Hence, neurochemical processes emerged, or manifested, as rational items of mediation. Items that the very sight of which would stimulate the rational processes of all members of the group or population. Likewise, when early humans first manifested the sensory awareness processes of their brains as their art, it would have involved two or more individuals watching and learning from each other, as they constantly stimulated each other's sensory awareness, to eventually manifest an item of mediation that stimulated, in a pleasurable way, the sensory awareness processes of their brains and the brains of other members of the group, whether that be an item of visual art, or music, or a new food dish. And the same basic process would have occurred for the manifestations of the other main areas of the human brain. But it was with language that all the neurochemical processes of the human brain could be stimulated for the first time in the history of hominid evolution. Initially, this system of sound items of mediation would have taken the form of stimulating the basic rational processes of the human brain, such as the use of new sounds, to direct individuals around an environment in a coordinated, rational way, in order to successfully hunt and gather food. For example,
"You two go to the waterhole. From along the ridge. And both of you, go to the waterhole. From around the small hill. So we can circle around the animals.
We are going to dig for tubers at the clearing. You all take the baskets to the tree at the South River. The tree will be fruiting this time of year."
And so on. By triggering the common space-time maps held in the brains of all group members, these simple sound items of mediation could organize the behavior of a group of individuals in a rational manner, as language is rational at its fundamental level. And because rationality underlies, to some degree, the manifestations of all the main neurochemical processes, language was therefore essential to the emergence of them all, as the main areas of culture. This was particularly the case with social intelligence. It was only through the use of language that these neurochemical processes could emerge as storytelling. Initially, the manifestation of social intelligence took the form of gossip. A small group of individuals would stimulate their social intelligence by talking about other group members. For example, what's he up to? What's his motivation? Is he engaged in deception? And so on. This was in effect the creation of the first stories, as the actual details of what other group members were doing, thinking or feeling were often unknown. So the gossipers were free to create an imagined story about the person, which they embellished with their own social intelligence. But in order for any story to be plausible to all the listeners, It had to accurately stimulate the social intelligence of all their brains. The social relationships of the people in the story had to be realistic, and their motivations had to be plausible. And the structure and flow of the story also had to have a fundamental logic and rationality, which accurately stimulated the rational neurochemical processes of the brains of the listeners. And so we can see how the sound items of mediation, of language, were essential to the emergence of social intelligence. And for that matter, to the emergence of all of the neurochemical processes. But in order to fully appreciate how the collective neurochemical processes of a population emerges as culture, we need to delve into greater detail as to how the actual processes of the human brains of individuals connect and influence each other. This involves a complex set of processes and conditions, and will therefore take quite some time to describe and explain. At least 3 separate videos. So before diving into that level of detail, it's worth pausing briefly to look first of all at a couple of practical applications of this idea. Practical, in the sense of how the concept of neurochemical emergence, this new biological, population-based perspective, can provide us with new insights into old questions that have long been discussed. We'll start, then, in the next video, with an examination of the question of why it is that the universe is comprehensible to humans.